I'm muted, but my speaker is not working. All right, let me try plugging
I can hear you, Pam.
back in. Boy, my camera went off.
We can hear you.
All right, you know what? I'm just gonna ditch this. All right, hopefully you can hear me now. And
we can hear you.
Can you see me now?
Yep,
Wow.
we can hear you, but I can't see you.
Hmm.
Oh, she can't hear us. Yeah.
Check my connection, use a different speaker. I might have to do things via
We can see you now too.
sign language. All right, let me try this one more time.
Well, I see you and hear you.
Yeah, hi, Laura. So my computer's telling me that my speaker's not working.
Well, we can hear you,
Oh, you can?
but I don't think you can hear us.
I can't hear you. No. Oh, well, you guys must be having a blast. I kept thinking all of you were saying we can't hear you. Well, hi, everybody. And we'll just, I'm going to hang up on you, Laura.
Okay, sounds good.
But thank you. Bye. All right. And I apologize for whatever kind of, because I'm getting messages here that the microphone, my audio isn't working, and I thought it meant my microphone, but I guess it just means I'm not going to be able to hear you. So we're just going to wing it, and if you have things to say, just do them in the chats, and we will address them accordingly. So, welcome back. Boy, it's another fun Tuesday evening, getting off to a roaring good start after having had last week off. We're going to actually get to what last week was in a little bit. But there's actually, this is a sneak preview. This is a, shall we say, a souvenir from last week. This is a yeah, my volume is on, but you know, this laptop, it's nearing its end of life, end of user life. And I think what I'm going to have to do is reboot again. I just did it a little while ago this morning, but the speaker drivers get out of whack. So as long as you can hear me, we'll just go with that. All right. So this is a souvenir from this past week. This is an acorn. Actually, I brought several of these acorns back because I thought they were so interesting. I'm going to give you a view of the top. All right. Here's another top. And then here's the underside of the acorn. Here's another one. This one's a little less mature. This one's a little more mature. And then this one, quite immature. So here we have, like I said, that's a sneak preview. We're going to get back to these in a little while. And then I wanted to mention, you might have noticed this yourself, and we will address in a little while what's birds. There's lots of things going on with our birds as we're in the midst of fall migration. We've already had a lot of things pass through. Our swallows left a long time ago. Our purple martins left even before them. Warblers are mostly gone now. A few hardy ones might be sticking around. But now we're starting to see the arrival of our winter birds, the birds that come down from the north and spend the winter here in good old northern Illinois. Bob, I have to thank you for this. I did not know that 100 and change years ago, almost 120 years ago, the little bird we know today as the junco was thought to be 20 different species. And the field guides back then broke down all the birds that we today consider to be subspecies. They lumped them into different birds, different species. So I'm going to pull up here. Juncos are a type of sparrow. And let's see, that's the white wing. Where's our slate colored? That's the junco that we typically see here. Now, this is a field guide. This one isn't over 100 years old. This one goes back to 1946, I believe. It's the Audubon Bird Guide to Eastern Land, 1946, Eastern Land Birds. And at this time, we had listed the white-winged junco, Junco aikini, the slate-colored junco, Junco hyemalis, which is actually the species name that's given today. The pink-sided junco, Junco oreganus, which is now called the Oregon junco subspecies. And then we have this sort of ambiguous slate-colored junco by pink-sided junco hybrids. And the comment here says there is no general agreement as to the number of species of juncos. They form a wide-ranging group which occurs from the Arctic tree line south to western Panama. Although the 21 currently recognized types are assigned to 10 full species, many ornithologists believe that only 2 species are valid, the dark-eyed and the yellow-eyed. The difference in behavior between the birds in these two groups and the close similarity within each group lend weight to their view. Actually, as juncos are all geographically complementary, each with its exclusive territory, they constitute a good example of a super species. And remember, this is 1946. Many of the 10 recognized species do not pass the biological test of valid species. Interbreeding is common where ranges meet, and intergrades or hybrids are frequent. One must expect occasionally to encounter in the field birds showing almost every possible combination of the supposed species characters. Keep that in mind. You know, people tend to assign, sometimes some people will assign a value to a bird. Like, you know, I hear all the time, oh, it's just a robin. And as we get into winter and juncos, slate-colored juncos in our area are very common. And sometimes people will say, oh, you know, they're just juncos. They really are interesting little birds with a fascinating little history. So that's your history lesson for today. Let me set this down. I wanted to, John and Bobby, you had sent some interesting information a while back, and it piggybacks on some interesting information that you had shared, Diane, when you were out at the Mississippi River Museum in Dubuque. We talked at that time about mussel relocation. And John and Bobby sent a really interesting article that I'm going to show you. That, let's see. All right. I'm gonna share now. Remember, I'm not gonna be able to hear you tell me if I'm messing this up. So let's just hope I get it right. this first time here. Let's snipping tool. Where's our, all right, I'm just going to share the screen and I'm going to be divers, locating endangered mussels and preparation. Jake, there was let me just scroll down here. This there they are. Look at all of those mussels. Let me see if I can move this bar over so you can see. And I'm gonna close this too. There we go. Look at all these different mussels. A fantastic diversity that were pulled out of the water by divers who went down between 15 and 30 feet to pull these mussels up. A lot of the mussels were over on the Iowa side of the bridge. They did work both sides of the river, but you know, they would go in and they would pull these mussels up and relocate them, get them out of the way so that the construction equipment that was going to be down in the water would not crush them. One of the coolest things was, well, one, the number. They pulled over a period of, I think it was about 2 or 3 months, they pulled out almost 30,000 mussels, 29,500, give or take a few. Mussels were pulled out and relocated, and amongst those were 400 Higgins pearly-eye mussels, which is a federally endangered species. So it's a particularly rich area for mussels, even more notable given the fact that this used to be an area where mussels were pulled out probably a lot more than 29,500 to be made into buttons. So the bridge work will proceed. The mussels are safely out of the way. The story, though, it reminded me, some of you area residents might remember this. St. Charles actually did a mussel relocation too. This was back, going back, oh gosh, almost definitely over 20 years, maybe close to 25, when the St. Charles Park District was looking to stabilize the shoreline of Otter Creek at our Otter Creek Bend Wetland Park. There were boulders put in, there were root wads put in, and in order to be able to do that, to move those heavy objects on equipment was going to be in the creek bed. So there was a mussel relocation project that went on back then. I participated one afternoon. I was pretty new in the field at the time, and it was exciting. I didn't really understand the whole coolness of mussels, how they need a fish host in order to disperse their young. But it was neat to be rubbing shoulders with some of the heavy hitter ecologists in our area as we fished around literally on our hands and knees, feeling for these mussels, pulling them up, and then putting them in mesh bags and putting them upstream from where the project was going to occur. Now, also, if you're local and you've been to Otter Creek Bend Wetland Park in the last few years, you may have noticed the condition of the banks. That project was done with the best information that was available at the time. Since that time, there's been a lot of development that has occurred upstream of the park, a lot of subdivisions, strip malls. That whole big Walmart complex is part of the Otter Creek watershed that's up there in, I don't know if that's Elgin or South Elgin, between Hops and Bowes Roads. There's a 500 and some house subdivision on Stony Creek, which is a tributary of Otter Creek Bend. There's a lot more water rushing into Otter Creek than there was back when that bank modification was made. And as a result, the volume of water, especially when we have rain, is cutting behind those root wads and those boulders. So it worked for a while. I don't know, looking at the longer term, the other thing that's contributing to the issue at Otter Creek Bend is the fact that it was kind of channelized. It doesn't have the nice meanders in it that will tend to slow down the flow of the water. And the mussels themselves, now we do still see them. There seems to be a pretty decent mussel population existing still. So hopefully those relocation efforts in Otter Creek work, and hopefully these relocation efforts here in the Mississippi River work too. But just great number of mussels and a wonderful diversity. So thanks for sending that, John and Bobby. Wanted to make sure I shared that with you all. Now, from here, I think I'm going to have to stop the screen share because we're going to go to a different thing. Let's see. Let me find you all again. There we are. So last week, we didn't meet because I wasn't here. There was a class that I had signed up for in August, and it was so hot. It was hot here. It was even hotter downstate where this program was being held. So the decision was made to push it back a couple of months, and so we'd already booked the good nature dates, hence we had to reschedule them. But anybody who was booked for last week, we did open up October 29th, which is in 2 weeks. And everybody who was already registered for that is now, the wizards over at Potawatomi waved their magic wand. You are now registered for October 29th. If you can't make it, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. You might get an email with a link, but if you can make it, great. And you're set to go for October 29th. But that, yeah, I promise I won't book anything over that. I'll mention this now, and I'll probably mention it again at the end. We have to cancel next week too. I had told a homeowners group that I was available on October 22nd. They only meet 4 times a year. And so I said yes, and then I realized that was not our off night. So no good natured next week, but yes, good natured on October 29th. Like I said, we'll bring that up again before the night is over. Let's now go to where I was last week, which was a really cool place, not all that far away. This is actually, I've mentioned this town before, Petersburg, Illinois. It's where my mom went to high school back in the day. Actually, we want to share this one right here. Let's go. These slides into our senior outreach for this month. So let's start from our current slide. We're going on a road trip, starting up here in northeastern Illinois. We're going to travel southwest to a little area just northwest of Petersburg. It's about a half-hour's drive. Northwest of Springfield is the little town of Petersburg. It is the county seat of Menard County, and it's got some really cool things to show. I went with 3 friends, 3 nature nerds, and the trip came about as a result of a trip earlier this year where we had gone down and stayed here at the Riverbank Lodge, which this in itself has kind of an interesting story. This building was built as a bank. There's another bank in town, a bigger, longer standing bank. And eventually that bank put this bank out of business. Well, it was a lovely brick structure. So the decision was made to keep it, modify it just a little bit, turn it into a hotel. So that's a brief history. Oh, and the other part is just behind this building is the Sangamon River. So it is the Riverbank Lodge, couple little plays on the word bank there. Cool place, very friendly folks that run it. They told us when we were there earlier this year about a series of programs they run. They call them field trips for grown-ups. And they tap into the local, the Menard County nature nerds. And it turns out there's quite a few of them there. We signed up this time for 2 classes, one on trees in Illinois history, and the other one was kind of a combination of geology and archaeology and anthropology, looking at the geologic forces that shape central Illinois, which are similar to what we see up here in northern Illinois, and then also the people who lived on that land for many, many years. Now, we started off our field trip last Monday on the trip out to this little cemetery here. This is called the Old Concord Cemetery, and it's not really one you can just drive up to and walk around on. You have to, our instructor, a gentleman named Guy Sternberg, he had to get permission to drive across some farmland. We were actually in a swale between 2 fields, so we weren't decreasing yields or anything, because this is very much corn and soybean country. This is mostly rural county. And we drove back to this cemetery. You can see by the look of the stones here, this has been here for a very long time. This is where a lot of the inhabitants of the little settlement of New Salem, which is now called Lincoln's New Salem State Historic Site, a lot of the people who lived there were brought out here for burial. One of the most famous, and one of the reasons we went out to see the cemetery, this is where Anne Rutledge was buried. Now, Anne Rutledge, she came before Mary Todd Lincoln. Some say this was Lincoln's first true love. Some say this was Abraham Lincoln's only true love. She died very young. She was only 22. And she was buried out here at Old Concord. Well, you'll notice this stone does not look like it's nearly 200 years old, but it was an addition made when some of Anne's remains were moved into Petersburg to a more auspicious burial site. We'll get to that story in just a little bit, but every one of these graves had stories to tell. This was one of a member of the Clary family. The Clarys were a family that Abraham Lincoln lived with when he was here as a young man in Illinois, and they treated him like a son, and he treated them like brothers and parents. The stones in this cemetery, there were some repeating themes. This was one. What looks kind of like a fountain. If you look closer, you'll see it's a weeping willow, one of the universal signs of mourning. This was present on a lot of the stones that were in this old cemetery. Another one was this image of a finger pointing up, and the guy had a couple of stories about that. The one that I wished we'd been able to follow up on, but the stones are actually at another cemetery in another part of the county. He said that this image of the finger pointing, the index finger, I should say, pointing up towards heaven, was repeated over and over again, but there was a little twist on it. There was a woman, you know what they say about a woman scorned. Well, her husband had left her for another woman, and somehow the husband and the other woman died, and the first wife was left in charge of the arrangements. So she, as she had the stones, you know, gave them the information with the name and everything, and they ask you to what design would you like? Do you want the weeping willow? Do you want the finger pointing towards heaven? She said, "Oh, I want the finger, all right." She asked though that instead of it pointing up, that it point down. So that's now on my list of things to go back and see. All kinds of stories with these old graves. This was a really cool, twisted old sycamore. You know, the cemetery, as so many cemeteries are, that it was on a hill. This is the Grand Prairie. This is there's not a lot of trees unless you happen to be near water in this part of Illinois. This is an old, twisted old sycamore that has persisted amongst all of the changes that have occurred there over the last few hundred years. And this, so I think I believe this. I've been looking at it some more though, and then I've been looking at some of the things my cat Jimmy does, and I'm kind of buying into it, but I think I need more information. This is a sandstone grave marker. This is not the side, there's engravings on the other side with the, you know, the person's name and everything, but there were 2 or 3 stones that look like this in the cemetery. And Guy asked us, you know, what do you suppose caused this? Was it stones that were thrown during a storm, you know, hail, erosion, tree branches? What, you know, was there a bush that was rubbing up against this? Well, he said, no. What he said caused this, I thought was so cool. I almost believe it. He said that this was caused by bobcats scratching their claws on the sandstone. And the reason I kind of believe it, but not 100%, is I've seen what Jimmy Cat does, and my cat Jimmy does on his scratching post, and the claws are pretty well oriented, straight up and down, and maybe these were at one point. You know, maybe this is what it looks like when a whole bunch of cats scratch their claws on an area. This does look a little bit like claw marks up here at the top. Until we find out, you know, that it was actually caused by something else, we'll go with the bobcat story. But because there are a lot of bobcats. In fact, Menard County is one of the counties in Illinois where it is now legal to hunt bobcats because there's that many of them. But I thought it was, if nothing else, a cool thing to muse on and try and figure out if it really indeed is the case. Well, from there we went to another cemetery, not so much to look at the graves, but to check out this tree. This is an amazing example of a type of oak that we do not have around here. It's called a blackjack oak. And this marker describes it as typically small, contorted, and slow growing. This one, though, is thought to be a few hundred years old. It's the state champion blackjack oak. And it's really, let's go back here. It literally is outstanding in its field. There's the other trees that are behind it here. Those are hackberries. This is the only oak in the area. It's not likely to get any little blackjack friends anytime soon because it does occasionally self-pollinate, doesn't produce a lot of acorns, and there's no other blackjack oaks in the area to get to share pollen with. So it's probably just going to remain like this. It's kind of a sentinel here at the Kirby Cemetery, which is also, as you can see, amidst the cornfields. Now, from here, we went back into town, and I had to stop and take a picture. This, so I mentioned Petersburg is the county seat of Menard County. This intersection here has the distinguished title of being not just the only stoplight in town, but the only stoplight in the county. So that gives you an idea of the population density in this area. I think Petersburg has about 2,000 people, and that kind of quadruples the populations of the towns around it. Now, it's also funny. It's broken. The green works over here, but the green over here was burned out. It was such a refreshing change from, say, Randall Road. Anyway, we made our way up to another cemetery, also on a hill overlooking, this one is overlooking the town of Petersburg. Remember how I said Anne Rutledge was moved, or kind of moved? What Guy told us was that when they having that connection between Anne Rutledge and Abraham Lincoln, after he was assassinated, there was a lot of concern about Anne being out there, virtually inaccessible to anyone who might want to go visit her grave. So the decision was made to bring her into town. The only thing was, when they went to dig her up, they couldn't find her. They found a button and some cloth, and I don't know if they weren't digging in the right place, or something had happened to her bones. Anyway, they brought the remains that they were able to find of Anne, the cloth and the button and some soil, fit in a teacup, and that's what they brought here and buried at this particular site. It's marked by this humble little marker here, but then you can see behind it, there is quite a large memorial. This is some of the prose of a local writer. You may have heard of him, Edgar Lee Masters. He wrote the Spoon River anthology. He's a writer I'm somewhat familiar with, just because my mom being from this town, this is what they studied in school. My uncle in particular was not a fan of reading. And I don't know if you can make out many of those words, it is very, shall we say, stilted language. It took me 3 or 4 times to read through this. And even at that, I was not, I got a lot more out of just looking at Anne's grave than I did out of reading it. I shouldn't knock the guy. He did have quite a following back in the day, but this whole area here is kind of a monument to Anne Rutledge, Lincoln's first and perhaps only true love. This is the Anne Rutledge tulip tree, another giant tree. This was actually in place when the tree was already growing when they moved Anne to this cemetery. That's Guy Sternberg there on the left, our instructor for the day. He, by the way, is affiliated. He's now a professor emeritus with Illinois College down in Jacksonville. Here's what was written about this tree. It was actually a centerpiece when they created this cemetery in 1879. Those cables and lightning protection that they refer to are actually really cool. It's not something, when I've heard about lightning protection in the past, it's always been lightning rods, but this is a system of cables, metal cables, that will direct the energy from a lightning bolt down. This cable goes all the way down the side of the tree, and then it runs out, I don't know, 15 or more feet away from the tree and from the grave, so that the energy in that lightning can disperse and not harm the tree or anything else around it. This grave caught my eye too, and I really thought that I'd find all kinds of things about Arthur L. Dick, the world champion on crutches. When I got back home and started looking up, I expected to see YouTube videos, maybe a YouTube channel. I didn't really find too much. Maybe you guys can dig up some more. I thought this was something I couldn't believe I'd never heard of him, but he lost a leg in an accident, and he then spent his life entertaining people. He could roller skate. He also, where does it say he ran? He would run in races, and it says he never won, but he never was the last person to finish either. His best time in the mile race was 5 minutes and 14 seconds. I can't do that. When I walk to work here, a mile takes me, well, on a really good day, about 18 minutes. And, most days when I'm distracted by things, it can take me half an hour. So cool guy. If you can learn more about him, I encourage you to, because he does really sound like he was an inspiration to a lot of people. From the Oakland Cemetery, we went down south of Petersburg, a couple of miles to Lincoln's New Salem. The main thing Guy wanted to show us was a couple of oak trees, but we did stop at a couple of cabins along the way, including this one. This was the cooperage, the barrel making cabin. And what he pointed out here was the difference in logs between what's in the bottom, say, third of the cabin, and then these upper logs. The upper logs, which to my eye look newer, are actually the original logs of the cabin that go back to 1830 when New Salem was a settlement. The lower ones were damaged by rain and snow. They got wet and they got rotted out, and they had to be replaced. So the lower part of the cabin is actually the newer part of the cabin. And then we arrived here at this part. So Lincoln's New Salem is what, were it not a settlement, we would call it an upland forest habitat or woodland habitat. It's on a rise. It's well drained. It is not the place that we would normally see these types of oak trees. And remember those acorns I showed you a little while ago? Well, they came from these trees. These trees are called overcup. Overcup oaks. Here's a closer look at those acorns. The cap actually goes over the nut and pretty much encases it. Why this is unusual is the they just, the tree would not normally be found. I got to get a drink of water here. Sorry. There we go. Much better. The those trees, let's go back to them here. They are from where Lincoln was born and spent time as a very young boy down in Kentucky. That area was a lowland area. It was wet. And this is a tree that thrives in wet lowland areas, not so much in the upland area. But when they created the Lincoln's New Salem Park, they wanted to have some items that harken back to Lincoln's boyhood years. So they chose the overcup oak. It's a little secret. If you ever find yourself down there, it's a great nature nerdy factoid to toss out. Trees that would not normally be found growing in that part of Illinois. This is, guys, now we've gone from Lincoln's New Salem. We are now at the Star Hill Arboretum, which is also south of town, south of Petersburg. Guy he finally found somebody, and apparently this is his wife's doing. His wife's name is Edie. Finally found somebody who loves bald-faced hornet's nest as much as I do. They have quite a collection there. They even have a little display of the artistry of the nests. This is hanging on the wall. It's when we make little slices of branches, we call them tree cookies. I think this is more like a tree, like sheet cake slab. This is called Lincoln's Vault Oak. And that picture there shows where Lincoln is buried. There was an issue about 30 some years ago where it looked as though, well, it didn't look, it was happening. The roots from this oak tree were growing into Lincoln's vault. And of course, there was concern about moisture and degradation. And you certainly don't want Abraham Lincoln's tomb to fall apart because of some oak tree. Well, Guy, as well as some other experts, weighed in and said, hey, don't be cutting this wonderful oak tree down. All we need to do is prune back the roots, because you can prune a tree's roots just like you can prune a tree's crown. It has to be done carefully, but it can be done correctly. They could have saved the tree and the vault. That opinion was overruled. The tree was cut down, and Guy received a slab of the tree as, I don't know if it's a consolation prize or just a kind of a slap, but interesting story about that oak. Growing outside of the Star Hill Arboretum was this plant here. Looks a little bit like a burning bush, and if that's what you're thinking, you would be in the right genus. It is a euonymus. This is Euonymus americanus. It is also known as the American strawberry bush. It doesn't grow this far north, but in its area, it's happy in the south and the southeast. Petersburg, I think, is about as far north as it would be happy growing. I loved its name, though, American strawberry bush, or even better, the Hearts of Burston shrub. This Star Hill Arboretum, they have 2,500 different types of trees growing on their property. This is one of the places that was quite concerned when the periodical cicadas were out back in May and June, because they had a lot of young trees they had to net. This wasn't one of them. This is the state champion catalpa, the northern catalpa tree. This thing was a monster. There were 5 of us in the group, and we could not put our arms all the way around this thing. It was really quite stunning to look at. From there, we went back to the hotel, refreshed, had dinner, got a good night's sleep. Next morning, I go out and we meet our next instructor. This is Dr. Is it Dr.? We'll just call him Mike Wyant. He was a director of the Illinois State Museum, known as Dixon Mounds. He's now director emeritus. Here he's telling us about the glacial impact in this particular part of Menard County. The tree line that you see there in the distance, that's the Sangamon River. And it's been heavily channelized over the years, straightened out so that drain tiles running through these farm fields, they empty into the river, and then the river, being straightened out, will carry the water away much quicker. I don't know, in this area, there is a lot of tile, because it is a lot of it. It's very sandy soil there, and some of it is considered, bottomland because it is so close to the water there. But the water table is shrinking, and you're seeing more and more cases of people having to irrigate their crops because of the changing climate, and it's just drier there than it used to be. From that starting point along the Sangamon, we traveled a little bit farther north and west to an area known as Emiquon. It's a huge property owned by the Nature Conservancy. And what we're looking at here is, and here, is an amazing amount of restoration. This at one time was all cropland, and it's been brought back to its natural state. Now, some of it is still undergoing restoration, but the gist of it here, that steep bank used to lead down to this flat area below. This used to be the bed of the Mississippi River. But when the glaciers pulled back, or pushed down, actually, when they grew, they pushed the Mississippi River to the west. And then in this channel that the Mississippi had created, then became home to the Illinois River. Super cool stuff. Just, I wish, and they will offer the class again. If anybody's interested, I can get you more information, but we just were wrapped all day long listening to Mike's stories. From there, we traveled over to Dixon Mounds, which is a museum I first went to when I think I was about 6 or 7 years old. The Dixon family noticed at that, we're talking in the 1950s and 60s, they started excavating these mounds that they found on their land. And lo and behold, I'm just going to show this briefly and then we're going to move on. They were full of bodies. Now I'm going to move on because that part of the museum is no longer for viewing. That, you know, the repatriation that has gone on in not just Dixon Mounds, but a lot of other places too. The idea of putting previous cultures members on display, putting their bodies on display, it's just, you know, it's not cool. So the mounds, there's a wall now where those excavations are. They're still there. They didn't move them anywhere, but they're no longer available for public viewing. Here, Mike was taking us through the lives of Indigenous people here in Illinois going back thousands of years. The display we're standing in front of showed different types of tools through the ages, different types of pottery. And then the surrounding area there talked about how life of the inhabitants changed from being hunters and gatherers to having gardens, to, you know, growing full on, you know, farming with crops, and the addition of corn that came up from Mexico and was grown as a crop. There's all sorts of cool things. And what was kind of sad at Dixon Mounds, I remember it being a thriving museum for many years, but we were the only ones there. Now, granted, it was a Monday. There was one school bus when we got there, but they left. We had the whole place to ourselves, which, again, it's kind of cool, but also kind of sad. And it's still open every day. So if you happen to find yourselves out in the northwest of Springfield, a little bit near the town of Havana, go and check out Dixon Mounds. We'll end this part of the trip with this one. This, just because those mounds the Dixon family excavated and the artifacts were put on display doesn't mean those were the only mounds around. This whole area is full of mounds. There's a mound here. There's a mound here. In fact, this mound, Mike said, this used to have a house on it. In the cornfields, he had us stand up on his vehicle. He said when there's soybeans in this field, this mound is a lot more obvious, but you can see it here. It's got corn planted on it this year. But yeah, mounds, the remnants of previous cultures are just all over because it was such a rich and fertile area in the former Mississippi and then the Illinois River Valley. Super cool area, both from a a restoration point of view, those areas that have been transformed from cropland back into natural area, and then also anthropologically. All right, I'm going to leave that there because I just saw we are almost out of time, and there's a little bit of nature news that I wanted to share because we got 2 weeks worth, and we don't have next week to count on. So let's. I'm going to do. Oops. All right, I'm going to do one more share, and we're just going to zip through a few slides here, folks. Onto your hats. Cormorants, wrote about them this past week. They will always be one of my favorite birds, but I'm just waiting for the fallout because of this habit they've developed of sitting on our streetlights. Now this next image here, this is a video. This was actually on October 1st. This was October 3rd. It was not quite 2 weeks ago. Can you see the bird's throat pulsing? Now this wasn't a super hot day, but it was pretty warm there in the sun. This is a technique that birds use to cool off. It's called gular flapping, and they drive air back and forth across the throat. You can see he's got his beak open, he or she. This is a young bird too, a young cormorant, because it's got a lighter color to it. It is sitting in the sun, but it's also kind of like panting. You know how dogs will stick their tongues out? Well, this is a means for birds to cool off, the gular flapping. Now, the reason why I think that these birds might not be beloved by everybody here in town is the mess they leave behind. It's an inevitable part of having birds around, and with this being such a popular roosting point, I'm just waiting for somebody to say something. One thing I want to do, I didn't have time this particular day, but I wanted to go back and check for pellets. Cormorants eat fish, and fish have scales and bones, and when they swallow the fish whole, there's going to be parts of those scales and those bones that are not digestible. So they will actually cough up a pellet, much the same way an owl does. So I'd like to spend some time before all this gets cleaned up to see if we can't find ourselves some cool cormorant pellets to check out. Brief note for anybody who's local, this is what the inside of the blue goose looks like right now. It's on its way to becoming a Whole Foods. It's supposed to open sometime, I think, in the spring of 2025. But as you can see here, they've got a long way to go. This was a neat idea. One of the people on last week's trip was Jim Mikowski. Jim and Sue are nature nerds through and through. They live in a wonderful home that has lots of native plants. I asked him what was going on here. These are tomato cages. This is a way to plant native plants without having to process the seeds. They just took bundles of plants, put them in the tomato cages. Those seeds are going to drop and disperse on their own, and we'll see what we get. Thought it was kind of cool. It's something I might want to try at some point once I get my yard in a state where I can actually start to do some plants like this. This was from the trip too. I was so excited. I was brushing my teeth, and who should come out to say hello but a pseudo scorpion. These are good guys to have around. And especially a place like a hotel where people, there's new people in and out of there all the time. You don't know what they might be bringing in with them. This is the kind of little creature that will eat things. They like it moist. That's why we usually find them in bathrooms. In fact, this one retreated up underneath the faucet there. But they eat baby cockroaches. They eat silverfish. They eat all kinds of things that, if left to their own devices, could become a problem. So I was really happy to see that. I actually meant to say something to the staff, but I couldn't quite get my words to the point where it would sound like a compliment, like, hey, nice pseudoscorpion. But maybe next time I go down there, I will thank them for having creatures like this and tell them to please, please leave them alone. I took this picture. This was also at Emicon, but you remember a few weeks ago we looked at the work of the Natural History Survey, and they were challenging people to try and find, I think it was the Massasauga, find the snake hidden in the photo. Well, I took this picture and I was kind of bummed. I thought I had missed my target, but then I zoomed in and I saw, nope, she's there. I don't know if any of you can see what I was aiming for in this picture. If not, we're going to zoom in and we will find it, or shall I say, we will find her. She's pretty close to the center of the photo here. I just have to, oh, wait, I think she's over here. I have to remember myself where she is. Let's zoom in and see if we can't see her here. Well, you see her now? I'm going to put her right in the middle of the screen, and I think we can zoom in even more. It's a rabid wolf spider. Gosh, her body length was close to an inch long. You can see here, here's the markings on her cephalothorax. You can even see some of her eyes here. Her abdomen is obscured by this blade on this grass here. Here's her legs going out to the side. She ran across the path. This is another reason why I can't do a 5-minute mile. Stuff like this comes up. I had to quick snap this photo and then run and catch up with the group, so I didn't get left behind at Emicon. But super cool camouflage, one that works, I would say, pretty darn good. Wouldn't you? Another quick note: the hedge apples or Osage orange fruit is nearly fully developed now. This is a tree that I suspect will probably come down at some point if they continue with the restoration efforts. I know our restoration crew will take these out because this is a tree. It's native to North America, but it is not native to Illinois. It was, however, heavily planted, and that term I used, hedge apple, is the reason why these were used as hedges. They were planted. It was a lot easier to plant trees and then let them grow and form fences than it was to, put up a split rail fence. This practice was long before we had barbed wire. The Osage orange does have some pretty formidable thorns on its branches. The post, the wood though, it's also valued because it's so strong and it's rot resistant. So even after barbed wire became a thing, this wood was used for fence posts. And you can see these all over the country down there. Some still have wire attached to them. Some are just left standing like this, but this is wood that will be here. It's been here for a long time. I'm guessing well over 100 years, and it will continue to be there for some time yet. Now we're back home. We're back in a cemetery again. This is actually the New Hampshire Settlement Cemetery out in Elburn on the west side of Route 47. I went out there with you, Susie. We went out to check out the Northern Lights. This was actually a half moon that night, not even, maybe like a third of a moon. But compare that to this, the Northern Lights. I was really trying to get some of the green that was showing up in some people's photos. Wasn't able to get much of that, but it was quite a display. This was last Thursday night when the conditions were pretty good for spotting this phenomenon from the north. And by the way, let me just add, that cemetery is pretty good for viewing too. There's no gate. I actually know a couple of people that are buried there. My old neighbors from when I was growing up, Esther Duncan and her mom, Florence Merrick, are married there. So if you want to go out there, check it out. If anybody gives you a hassle, just say, you're there to pay your respects to Esther and her mom. This is a couple of photos of a fine tiger salamander that found its way into a drain. The people who found it were worried because it was in a drain, and that's not really natural habitat. It turns out, though, the drain in their yard had an outlet into the wetland that was nearby. I think the salamander was just going in there because it was moist. We have had such a little amount of rain recently. This salamander found what was a pretty good spot. Look at how chubby it is. It's in wonderful shape. It's almost 8 inches long too. They wanted to know what to do with it, and I said, just put it back, at where the drain outlet is, and let it make up its own mind if it wants to go back in there. It's not underfed. It's it seems like it's thriving. So case like that, an animal knows best. Now, if it was trapped, if it had fallen in through the grate instead of walking up from the drain outlet, the open mouthed drain tube, yeah, it would need to be pulled out and placed somewhere else. But in this case, it just went where its senses took it, told it to go, which was up the drain pipe, to where it could keep its moist skin safe. Susie, this is you too. The puffballs are up, but you know what? They look really weird. They look like someone has been messing with them. I think this is a function of the drought too. This almost looks like the crease you see in a loaf of bread where it's been scored, loaf of sourdough bread. But this is a giant puffball. Normally they look like anywhere from like a softball to a volleyball to a beach ball in size, this nice white color. But the lack of moisture has, I think, caused them. I've seen on the Illinois Mycological Association Facebook page, people have been finding mushrooms like this throughout the state, where the puffballs are just not they're coming up out of the ground, but I think the lack of moisture is causing that deformity in the shape. Still tastes good though, right, Susie? And then I wanted to mention that lots and lots of birds are still on the move. This is a wetland off of Stearns Road near within James Pate Phillips State Park. Look at all these egrets. I actually had to pull over off of Stearns Road to take these pictures. The wetland, not very wet, but it was really, really cool. There had to be, I don't think I got them all in any one photo, but there was easily 15, maybe 20 egrets perched in and around this wetland. It's really, really a magnificent sight. So they are making their way south. This is not a very good picture, but you might be able to tell if we zoom in here. You can see the V-shaped wings of turkey vultures. They are migrating too, as are these are mostly red-winged blackbirds. I think there might be a cowbird or two mixed in with them. The blackbirds form these mixed species flocks. Some of these boys were even singing the other day. So lots and lots of birds flocking. We're not in a breeding season, so they don't have to have that animosity towards each other. They form these flocks. It's safer for them to move around in groups like this, safety in numbers, more eyes looking for predators and whatnot. But just 3 examples of many, many groups of birds that are out and about, moving around and through our area. Wallace, I'm not sure if you're here tonight. I can't hear you if you are, but super cool find in your yard of a spring peeper. In doing a little bit of research, trying to find out exactly, what they do in when they're not breeding, because the spring peepers, we know them for their peep, 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 peep sounds that they make. They can range as far as 130 feet away from their breeding pond, which doesn't sound very far, but when you consider these frogs are only an inch long, 130 feet is quite a distance. They can jump over 17 times their own length, which is also impressive. If we could do that, you know, if say a 6-foot man decides to jump 17 times his height, that would be it'd be over 100 feet. So good little jumpers. If we, oh, it's not going to let me zoom in. Spring peepers, they have enlarged toe pads, so they are good climbers too. These are guys are getting ready to overwinter amongst the leaf litter, hence their brown color. This is just proof to show you that I'm not always in nature. I forgot I put this in here. This is actually, I visited my old college roommates, and 2 of them live, they're not a couple, they just both happen to live in this super awesome building, an old hotel that is right across, it's just north of the city. It's right across from Lincoln Park Zoo. We were standing up on the deck, taking in the view Saturday night. I kind of wish that we'd stayed overnight, because they said that on Sunday morning, or not Sunday, just in the morning, doesn't have to be Sunday, it's pretty much every morning, they said they can hear the lions roaring over at the zoo. And the wolves howl too when there's a siren going by. I'll leave you with this. Let me move the bar out of the way here so you can get the full effect, in case you ever feel like you know, you're signed in, but you don't want to participate. Here's a handy little tip. Just change your screen name to reconnecting. And make sure you spell it right though. Have a little bit of Zoom humor there. All right, I'm going to stop this share, folks. We've gone a little bit over. Got a few chats here to get to. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 15 egrets at Nelson Lake. Yeah, egrets, and it's funny, you know, egrets and herons are great blue herons are very closely related, but they, the egrets, I can't recall seeing any egrets that overwinter up here. Great blue herons, quite a few of them opt to not migrate, and they will stay the winter. Sometimes they'll fish. Sometimes they'll go hunting for things like mice and voles too. But lots and lots of changes going out there, because it's fall, another season of great change. All right, folks. I'm not going to be able to hear you. So if you got any other comments, or if you would like a copy of that PDF that John and Bobby shared on the livers of the river, let me know. I'd be glad to share that with you. Gonna say goodnight for now. And remember, no meeting next week. Our next time together is going to be, believe it or not, the last Tuesday of the month, Tuesday, October 29th. So till then, have a great couple of weeks. Take care, and see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.